Before my photo shoot, I'm gonna fuel up and eat probably like the best low-key Thai cuisine spot in all of St. Paul. I always get the pad kimao, she get the house special pho, and then we got some wontons, and I got dessert coming later. It looks so fucking good. Food was incredible. Time to quickly go home because I just got my tires delivered at my house, and then we're gonna be doing a photo shoot. We're on the way to the shoot right now. Once we get to the shoot, I'm gonna explain my theory about photography. If you've ever taken a photography class, they're gonna say all these different things like leading line, guiding lines, rules of 3/4, all of these terms, the golden aspect ratio, all of these things in which you should incorporate into your photography. And if I look into any of the photography in which I actually would deem as like some of my favorite shots that I've ever seen taken by all these amazing photographers, a lot of them do not apply to these very simple rules. I think they're guiding rules, and I don't think you should take them too much with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, it's just you creating a form of art and having fun with it. We're on the way to the shoot right now. Once I get there, I'll explain some of my different shots that I like to take, especially to do with cars, because cars are hard to shoot. I'm gonna do an overview of what you need in your bag. First of all, you're gonna need your camera. I'm shooting on a Sony a7R Mark II. Absolutely love this camera. I got a gimbal on it, a little bit of a cage, and then a neck strap. Today, we're gonna be shooting, because I'm not shooting video, without the tripod, where we're just gonna be shooting like this. And the good part about this handle and this wrap, if you need to be able to wrap this around your hand, if you're shooting, which we are gonna be doing later, rollers, I'm gonna be able to wrap this around my arm and feel secure about this camera being outside of the vehicle. And even if I let go, it's just gonna fall and hang on my wrist. So this is really important if you're shooting any kind of roller shots. This handle I like as an upgrade. It allows me to shoot really steady and more cinematic shots. Also, it allows me to carry it and just have a good handle. If you don't have a handle, invest in a good handle. Some people like wooden ones. I just like the metal aesthetic. Next thing important is bringing way more batteries than you think you need. There's nothing worse than going to a shoot, having your battery die, and then running out and not having any more. So always charge up your batteries, making sure you're keeping them charged. The other thing, of course, if you're gonna be shooting photos, videos, anything, especially when shooting videos, is you're gonna want multiple SD cards. I'm gonna show you 3 different SD cards, and I'm gonna explain why it matters, the SD card. There's 3 different types, all 128 gigabytes, 3 different types of SD cards here. One's a gold, and they just have different memory write speeds. So the gold one has 190 megabytes per second write speed. If you're shooting 4K video, you're gonna need this, or else it won't let you shoot 4K video. The other ones are kind of universal. If you're shooting photography, I prefer the black or the silver one. This one is an image mate. Pretty much all it's saying is it's perfect for images. It does have a little bit of slow writer speed. Even on my images, the screen will be black for half a second before I can shoot my next shot. So getting one that good SD card matters. Silver is my universal one. This is the one I shoot on the most. On my camera, I actually don't shoot 4K that much. I actually prefer the quality of just an HD and then rendering up to 4K, only because editing and render times on my videos are astronomically larger. The other thing I'm shooting with, which is optional, is going to be a filter. I have a Mist Pro filter from Tiffen. I have a Tiffen Black Pro Mist 1. That's the quality. There's 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 0.1. 0.1s are the strongest out of the Mist series. 55 millimeters, that's just what the spec is for the inside of my face on my camera. And then this is a mist or hazing photo. I'll explain what it does. Whenever there's a direct point of light, instead it blurs it out like an old 70s or 80s. Imagine like the theaters, how they looked. I'll show up some photos of what it looks like before and after with mist. The third of all, which I did not bring with me, is gonna be a camera lens cleaner. I unfortunately forgot to bring a decent one, so I'll just be using the hoodie sleeve that I have on me right now and cleaning it before we get shots. There's nothing worse than going back and having to edit out the exact same hair that's on every single one of your photos because you forgot to wipe down your camera. Make sure that I'm keeping enough diameter on the top to bottom. As you guys know about the 3/4 rule, I want to make sure that I'm including the car along the bottom horizontal line, but also leaving enough room down below. With this car being very long and very aggressive throughout, I'm going to be doing some detail shots along the side to show some of the arrow work along the side, and that's what's going to stand this off. Shit ton of photos. As you can see, rain's starting to come in. Me and Mando are going to go for a drive, and we're going to be doing rollers, which is going to be perfect. Of course, Mando having to rev. We did some roller shots, and we ended up on this boat launch over here. This is gonna be really cool because the offsetting colors, the water is gonna look very similar to the same color as the car. It's gonna look super cool, and the layering is just super aesthetic. Again, follow this guy. If you guys haven't seen the craziest WRX, this guy has it right here. Just got done with a shoot. He's wrapping up. We shot over on the boat dock. Now time to edit all these cool photos we just captured. I'll show you guys how to edit and making sure that your guys' photo look as cool as you think it's gonna inside your head. So the remainder of the video, I'm going to have the photo over here and my settings over here, and I'll be in the middle talking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Okay, so to start with, we're going to be looking at the photo. The very first thing I'm going to adjust is going to be cropping and tilting it. When you're shooting it, you should make sure that on your camera, you actually have a line across it so you can make sure your photos are leveled. In this photo, it was slightly off just a little bit. If I wanted to really correct it, I would move it up, but then the car looks like it's leaning up really tall. This is technically horizontal lining, but for my photo I didn't like that. I prefer this where the lines go over the body lines of the car right there. It looks a little bit better. First thing you do is you crop it and make sure it looks good. Now that it looks good, okay, I do 3:4 aspect ratio. I post all my photos on Instagram, and 3:4 is the standard posting size on Instagram unless you're shooting square. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be messing around with lights. If we go to the before and the after, you can tell that it is way too overexposed. The way that it was super cloudy, even lighting across the entire photo, it was really easy to be able to whitewash things and oversaturate things. So during this, I turned down the exposure just a tad little bit. You can see just what the lighting does alone is this much. Okay, up to contrast a little bit. I turned up highlights just a little bit. The reason for that is I don't really want a lot of detail in the sky up around the trees. If the sky is super in focus and everything else isn't, then it's going to look as if that's the first thing my eye gets drawn to is the blue around the outside. I didn't want the eye to be cared about, so I just went like that with like 25, 32, somewhere around there. Shadows, I wanted to darken up too much, but not too much, just a little bit. I think if I were to re-edit this, I would go like -16 instead of what I had at, which was -17. I guess it's about the same. Whites, I wanted to be a little bit bright to bring up some of the top brightness and the shadow down below. I had it at -50. I think that's pretty reasonable. You can still see the accents of black, but it's not too dark. And white's not oversaturated along the top. Blacks I brought down just a little bit. A little bit can go a long way with the blacks, so I'm going to let it be where it's at. The other thing I'm going to do is coloring. I didn't mess with this at all. This is as shot. The only thing I'm going to mess with is my color mixer, which just means the greens I turned over to more of, I just desaturated it. I could have changed the color to make them more yellow, which is something that would have looked better with a color scheme. It would have looked a little bit more fall, but I left it with a green mixture and yellow. If I were to re-edit it, I'd probably bring it just over a little bit so there is definition in between, but not too much. Okay, saturation. This was super bright, and it brought up the detail of the car, this car in the background of this car. So what I did is I turned down the saturation of it, and that's pretty much what I did. The other thing I did, which I would recommend, is going to be called masking. I masked shadows down below, linear gradient from below, excluding the car, which I subtracted the car. I brought down the exposures to make sure that the only thing that is the brightest and most focused is in the center. Your eyes looking directly at it whenever you click in. The other thing I did is I brightened up the sky. The reason for that is it was a lot in focus, and I wanted to make it look like it had like really good lighting from up above. This, it's just kind of in focus with the sky. I don't want the background to be as much in focus. I want the car to be present and what draws your attention. That's a lot better. Other thing I did is I upped the exposure on the car just a slight little bit. This is the difference of before and after. You can tell all my edits, all I did was just make it slightly pop more against the background. That's it. It looks like I changed a lot. It's not that much changing. Wheels, I brightened it up and turned up the saturation of it a little bit. And then the overall image behind it, I made a mask for it, and all I did was saturize the back because there wasn't bright enough surroundings. That is the only thing I did with this. Okay. Then what you do is you drop over to Photoshop. Now, in Photoshop, I don't actually have my photos in which I used for it. But typically, when I'm doing this is if I need to replace anything in the photo, like if I don't like this stop sign, there is generative fill AI at this point. You can pretty much do this, do generative fill. I want to say I want to remove that lamppost. I'd click generative fill, and I would remove it from the photo. It's going to give me 3 different options. And if I want to create more, I can do more, but it's going to be giving me 3 different options of what I can use instead of having that sign there. Okay, and as you guys can see, it gave me 3 different options
for what that background's going to look like. In my photos, I do all my touch up during this process. This is a photo of my car with Christmas lights. These are 3 different options. I like this one the most. It keeps the lines of the background. Can't really see anything else. If you wanted to like remove this little thing, you could do that as well. Generally fill, remove, and then continue. If you wanted to add like a bald eagle, you could add a bald eagle. If you want to add a lake, you could add a lake. If you want to add a reflection, you could add a reflection. So on and so forth. So super useful tool. I will continue to use this as I do photography. I'm going to show you that same photo that I edited, but what I changed. So I'm going to put this over here, Lightroom over here, and you guys can kind of see the before and after of this photo. So I got rid of all of the ground, all of the dirt, all of the lines that were just grabbing too much attention in the foreground. I didn't really like that. So I got rid of a lot of it. Another thing which I did is I got rid of the car in the background. You might notice that there's a car back over here. Similar color car. It just didn't show the line of the hood. I got rid of it in generative fill and I removed it. Let's go over to a different photo of the exact same series so you guys get a little bit more in-depth explanation. Okay, I absolutely love this photo. When I go to look at this editing, the very first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to crop it and change it if at all. Actually, I really love the symmetry of it. Technically, I should draw on this side just a little bit more to line it up and make sure it's in the middle. But the cropping which I had on it, I actually really like. I'm going to keep this cropping. If you guys wanted to crop, I'd recommend cropping it down a little bit. Always making sure you shoot over too much and then cropping it down in post, just in case if you have a little bit of wiggle room, in case you need that extra wiggle room. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the coloration of this. I up the exposure a little bit. This is the difference of the photo before and after. Again, I wanted the sky to be in a focus a little bit. You can see the lines on the clouds, but not too much. I don't want it to be like drawing your attention or anything like that. Okay, highlights I turned up, shadows I turned down. Keep in mind with these blacks, I was very careful by only turning it down 0.2. That can drastically change the photo as well. The next thing I did is I did a lot of color changing. These lines were very yellow. I just changed them to be more orange. And the red, you could keep the red. It doesn't really make a difference. I guess I'll keep it in the future. I just personally didn't like how much attention this was grabbing towards the rear. I turned it down. But to each their own, you know. And there's like a little sign in the background that's orangey red back there that I also picked up. Okay, next thing I did is I did masking. Again, masking is super important. What I did is I did a linear gradient from bottom to top, excluding a minus of the subject, which is the car. And I just turned down the exposure on this. There's a lot we could do. We could turn up saturation around the foreground around the car. I wouldn't even mind turning it up just a little bit. Not enough to make sure that this road has a lot of coloring, but just a little bit to make it a little bit more interesting. The other thing I did is I upped the exposure of the sky to draw in your focus to make sure you're looking at the center of the screen because the car is the focus and the subject of this photo. So another thing I could have done, I could have turned up the saturation of it. I kind of liked how the sky looked like moody and cloudy and not that bright. So I kind of left it the way it was. Let me show you if anything I changed in post. This is the end photo. I don't really think I changed a whole lot in Photoshop AI like I did the previous one. I just really like the color. The shot is really good to me. There's a lot of like leading lines, these vertical lines that go over here. They're just drawing your attention. And then with this car being in subject with how dark the rear is, it just makes this incredible lighting effect from casting from above, this even lighting. I actually almost prefer to shoot on cloudy days over super bright days. Another shot I really like is this one. I really love the focus of the rear. The distraction of this wall is a little too much. I wish I was over a little bit and then the wall would have started like right here. But that's just something I didn't notice when I was actively shooting the photos. And instead, I noticed more in post. Okay. This is another shot I got of the car. I actually really like this shot. I did tilt the photo a little bit, not as much as I would have liked to now looking at it again. But it made the car feel really angular when I tilted up the left-hand side, so I let that be this time. The colorings I changed a little bit, blue, orange, and yellows, and greens I turned down a little bit. And then I did the exact same thing where I darkened up the foreground minus the subject and then turned up the brightness from above. Really love how this shot came out. Again, very similar to the last shot, just slightly further back, and I like the cropping of this one a little bit more. It feels very drastic, and it's the car is still the subject in the main, and the same amount of distance is on either side, but this photo just is a little bit more compelling than this one. Okay, this is the final shot we already went over of the last one. Again, this is the very last shot. This one's very similar to the other ones. Probably one of my favorite. I actually put it in the end, or the second to end of the slideshow on my Instagram. But this one has a lot of great details of the car, and I think the color of the wheels really pop on this one. That's it for this, realistically. If you guys have any questions of anything about car photography down below, please let me know. I'll be able to reply to them as fast as possible. And there's other great resources out there, like Larry Chen, who also makes YouTube content and is probably one of my favorite car photographers out there. There's some really great ones. Chazzy's up there. There's just some really great ones. All right, that's going to be it. Like and subscribe. Peace.
Yeah, there's a reason. We state to state, had to leave home for the weekend. Got him screaming. Wait.